Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Come in the tank. We're thinking, and we're drinking,
And we're thunked.
and we're thunked.
Oh my god, I'm probably more beer than man if we go far enough back at this point.
All right,
Okay.
Thunk Tank's going. Weirdly enough, for this being a tribute to Coffee Cast,
Why we do?
I'm really tired.
I just had some coffee and I feel great. I feel good. I hope everybody else feels good. I hope everybody else feels great because things are good.
Yeah. What did we drink?
Coffee's
just
working
now?
clearly. We just had an Ethiopian brewed via a Chemex. If you're not sure what that is, you should check
We'll
it
link
out.
it.
It's good stuff. I'm a big fan of the Chemex.
We'll link Ethiopia in the episode notes.
Shout out to Ethiopia.
Whole country.
Ethiopia, actually, my favorite
Birthplace of coffee.
my favorite type of bean to brew coffee with. Definitely, I'm a big fan of the Ethiopian brews.
So this is just going to be anything coffee, just a tribute to how coffee is a positive influence in our lives. Everything from the good coffee Joe and I drink to the psychotic Swedish coffee that Johnny or whatever you call it, the egg drop soup coffee that Johnny has, and from
Yeah, that's what it is.
China or whatever.
Yeah, I believe it's the translation is shit coffee, right? I think.
I don't know why you're trying to make it Asian. It's a Scandinavian form of preparing.
I was just
coffee.
trying to
Quite
make
tasty.
it not what it is.
Anyways, I think we're all coffee fans here, right? That's safe to say.
All big coffee fans.
Yeah. So how has coffee changed your lives? I would like to know.
That's a good opening thing.
Yeah.
As a tribute to coffee. Let's pretend this is like coffee's funeral. We're like,
It might be.
I mean, if you were talking to someone from Europe in the 1600s when the Christian church banned coffee because it came from the Middle East and they thought it was like the devil's drink,
Who told you that?
and then Pope, fuck, did I write it down? No. Some pope basically drank it, and he was like, I was able to stay awake through my nighttime meditation the whole night with focus. Like, I approve, and it became
Yeah,
like
he
a
definitely didn't call it my Pope meditation, but go on.
nighttime pope meditation.
Yeah, okay.
Now I got to go take a Pope shit in the woods. You know, one of those classics. But yeah, coffee. I actually, Johnny, you'll be familiar with this reference, but I was really engaged by the book series The Baroque Cycle, in part because one of the early mentions in the book is of I think like tea or coffee, and basically they draw the connection. Luke, they draw the connection that. Can you watch that laptop that's slipping? They make the connection that coffee really kind of essentially was the fuel of the Enlightenment era. Like, it really bridges that gap between Middle Age, and of course there's a lot of other factors at play, right? But they establish this is like a multi-thousand page book series, and they establish very early on that none of the scientific revolution would have been possible without these psychotics like Isaac Newton and all those guys staying up all day, all night, just frantically discussing philosophy and math equations because they were hopped up on caffeine, and almost all died of kidney stones because of it. But they came up with some awesome equations along the way, right?
Well, it's crazy because they drank mercury before they could get a hold of coffee, which keeps you energy up wise. But
Really?
Has some other long-term consequences.
oh yeah, it's just not great for you long term, but it can give you some vitality. Is probably the term they would use. But yeah, can you imagine that diet? Let's say middle to late 1600s. It was coffee, beer, maybe whiskey,
Wine.
wine. All your food, meat and vegetables were salted to shit because there was no refrigeration.
Yeah.
And like, how much actual water did you ever drink? You definitely were going to get kidney stones.
Yeah,
Man,
and
they
there
must
was
have
no
had
way
some-
to deal with it.
That was
had
what
some-
would they call kidney stones at that time? Just like God's mad at me pain?
Well, you know what they called removing kidney stones? There was one procedure, Johnny, right? And it was called being cut for the stone. And a lot of people just chose death.
It's pretty rough back then.
Yeah.
Now the term is lithotomy, I believe.
I'll take my chances with that over cutting for the stone.
But I've seen the tools in museums that they used to use. And damn, they're tough. So important. Here's our first PSA of the episode: drink plenty of water if you're a heavy coffee drinker.
I mean, just generally drink plenty of water.
Yeah.
I think that's a good policy, but
remember, coffee's a vice. You do have to balance it. It is a...
I've never had an addiction problem with coffee. I don't know about you. Like, there's
Whoa. What's the longest you can remember going without coffee in the last 5 years?
How do you define addiction? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wait, what is your metric of addiction or of being addicted?
I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not the kind of person
I don't have
that
a
goes,
cocaine problem. I just have a little bit with breakfast. I'm fine the rest of the day.
Well, cocaine would be a
Luke?
little different. I mean, coffee is definitely one of those things that
Cocaine would be a little different.
I guess, right? I mean, if you took a bump of Coke with breakfast, would people judge that more than coffee? Probably.
You would die way before
Yeah.
drinking coffee.
I
with
think a cup
breakfast
of
every
coffee
day.
a day
Probably get a
has
lot
been
of
shown to be
equations
healthy,
done,
right?
Yeah, a bump of Coke is never healthy.
I don't know about that.
I don't think a cup of coffee a day is good for you. How can it be good for you?
I mean, I've read a lot of things here and there.
Luke's read a lot of Facebook articles that his aunts have posted.
Yeah, that's the kind of quality that I've
And
read.
in his
but
defense, he didn't dive into the science and check. He just read the headlines on Facebook, John. So
yeah, caffeine, I don't think in any amount is good for you.
I
not
honestly
great for your
don't know
heart
the
and
research
stuff.
on that. I would have to say it could be something like anything where like a small amount, like they say a glass or two of wine
or nicotine.
is something that's good for you as long you know, like any kind of
Yeah, but
thing
it
that
might
you don't abuse.
But it might just not kill you like nicotine, because nicotine in its pure form will kill you. It will
stop
murder
your
you
heart,
instantly.
You also got the psychological benefits too. So like
That's true.
if you're like, let me read this first quote I got about coffee from Albert Camus. Should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee? That thought crosses my mind, not in like a literal way, but in like a sort of like psychological way. Should I turn towards hopelessness this morning? Now I'll make coffee.
Hey, if Al Camel said it, I'm down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's some
so-
truth to that. So in that sense, it's healthy in that it keeps me psychologically healthy. Johnny, you said the same argument about drinking during the coronavirus, like it's going to decrease your stress or something last episode.
Yeah, but alcohol is actually good for defeating coronavirus. Coffee, though, this is going to be one of those casts where me and Luke just end up arguing and taking different sides, because I really don't drink much coffee anymore. I used to drink a lot. I used to work at a coffee shop, but I just really don't drink it much anymore. It's too hard on my body to drink coffee and beer every day, so I've made my choice.
Yeah, I've had 3 cups today.
What
Because it's
do
such
you
a
ever
diuretic.
struggle with just mental alertness or just like caring about things?
Oh, he definitely does, but that has nothing to do with caffeine.
Yeah, I had that problem when I was drinking 3-4 cups a day.
Yeah.
I see. So you realized I wasn't getting any net.
No, it really was when I moved and I started working nights. You'd wake up, you didn't have to go into work till 3 or 4 p.m. So it's like if I get up at noon, it's like I don't need coffee to kickstart my brain. You know what I mean? You could just kind of take your time to wake up.
Okay.
So I kind of got off coffee that way, which I like, because when I do need it now, it works like a drug. If I do have to get up early for something. What's so funny?
There is a bug on Joe's laptop that was just crawling over your face.
And
It was fucked.
Yeah, that's why we were making those faces that you're making now, Johnny.
It's like
Is
one
it
of
on
those
my
big
eye?
fat beetles. I think it's a stink bug.
It's a stink bug.
Yeah, you don't want to crush that.
I'm
But
about to.
I don't
I'm about to freak
promote.
out.
That makes
So
it
I-
smell, Joe. Don't
Smell,
crush
yeah.
the stink bug. That's
You
like
want to catch it and throw it out.
I'm gonna
inside or-
unless somebody.
No,
does
you
want
want to kill it.
I'm gonna.
They're an
panic.
invasive species. Kill them.
Well, don't
Kill
kill
'em.
it in here.
if you crush it inside, it will stink. That's why they're called stink bugs, and it will tell their friends, "Come rescue me."
Really?
Something like that, pheromone wise.
Looks like I don't know, but I said it convincingly.
good.
I know about as much about stink bugs as I do the science of coffee and longevity.
I'm gonna kill it.
just flush it. Flush it
So
in the toilet.
I guess I would just say the big thing is I don't promote coffee as a daily intake. I think you should treat it like a drug, or like Tylenol or ibuprofen or something.
A once in a while thing, like road trips and things like that.
Yeah, like there are people who take Motrin every day and it stops working after a while, and it's like not great for your liver or kidneys or whichever one of them it's not
Easy,
great
big
for.
fella. Joe's
Whereas
now
if you
trying
never-
to kill the stink bug.
catch it.
Whereas if you don't ever use it, it's
Outside
like
with
any
that.
drug. The less you use it, it's more effective. You know, if you haven't been drinking for a while, that one beer gets to you a lot faster than if you're on
So,
a week-long vacation.
I've totally done that with beer. Like I've totally taken time off where I'm only going to have like one beer a night or none, and then knowing that on the weekend I get to like enjoy the buzz when I go to the brewery or something. But with coffee, I really can't function properly without caffeine in the morning. I can usually make it a few hours and like get by, but at some point as I go to engage my thinking gears in my head, I pretty much just get hopeless and go, I can't do this, and I get irritable basically because I can't seem to complete a thought. It's almost like I can't think, but I know how I can. I know my potential to think, but I can't seem to accomplish it in the moment, and so I just get irritable, and I go like, "It's not wear and tear."
Yeah, Luke, you just described
That's
the
physical
textbook,
addiction
a
there.
textbook addiction. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's called
Then I'm
withdrawal.
addicted.
Which is fine. A lot of people
Yeah.
are.
No, I mean that's just a word.
I think as long as you're you have to be aware of it, because what happens to me is, because a lot of my work schedule is kind of based around the type or the time of year, because a lot of it comes in swells with grading where it's like, oh, now I have to stay up till 2:33 in the morning to finish grading these papers, so I guess I'll start or keep drinking coffee at 7:00 tonight, and that builds over the course of the semester. So by the end of the semester, I'm drinking like 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day sometimes. So I purposefully am aware of that. And then as soon as the semester ends, I like cut off almost.
Yeah.
And
that's what you should do.
And I start drinking
think.
a lot more tea, and I try to balance tea over the course of that, because tea, I feel like, is the regenerative version of drinking coffee, sort of. Like coffee is diesel, whereas green tea to me is like an electric car or something.
So
I
green
think
tea has a pretty
coffee-
decent amount of caffeine in it. It's
like-
something.
I think it has
like
the
a
most
third.
versus,
It's like 50
black
milligrams,
tea.
I think.
Or it's
And-
25 to 50, maybe?
25 to 50,
Yeah.
and-
Depending on how long you steep it, yeah.
Yeah, and coffee, depending on again how much you
But green
define
tea
a
has
cup as being.
green tea has actual medicinal benefits as opposed to coffee.
I think
what's
coffee
the
has
difference
some.
between-
I did not do the research before this episode for the health benefits, but coffee does have some. I've seen plenty of longevity
but I know
coffee correlations,
but I know
not
green
causations.
tea definitely has probably more, right?
Probably, like it has more antioxidant type shit in it, right?
Now, is it that coffee makes you live longer, or is it somebody who drinks coffee every day of their life and makes it to like 75? Their system's still fine. They're probably going to be fine for another 20 years, kind of a thing.
I think it's just a correlation.
of
So I
those?
don't know if they have the causation behind it. Yeah,
Oh, it could be a correlation.
What's the
People who
difference
don't drink coffee
between-
are just wusses?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the difference between green tea and black tea? Do they roast the black tea? No, it's just dried out, right?
I mean, it's just a
wilted?
different. It's
a different leaf, I
It's a
think.
different leaf. Yeah, different plant.
But to get
species.
it dark like that, do they kiln it? Do they don't roast it like a coffee? Like coffee beans get roasted pretty high temps, right?
Yeah,
What's
they
like
roast
a
it
dark
like
roast?
thousands of degrees. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they?
So that's probably where coffee becomes not good for you, because isn't that where you get carcinogenic stuff?
When you
forming
get
at
the dark
those?
roast, yeah. But
Yeah.
in coffee roasting, they call it like. I mean, there are different types of roasting, but you have first crack, which is where the bean first makes that crack, and then you have second crack, and it literally sounds like popcorn kernels cracking when you're roasting. It's quite loud, actually. I was I've been with my friend once when he roasted, and he has a barbecue roaster. Have you ever seen Kevin's setup in his
No,
garage?
but I know what they look like.
It's like a big metal drum, and he actually hooked it up to a motor now, so it automatically spins.
Wow.
He turns on the barbecue, and he has a temperature probe inside that wires out to his thermometer. And basically, if you can keep an eye on the temperature change, and you know the time, and you basically that you have curves that you follow for different roasts. They call it roast profiles.
But they roast for a while, right? Don't they roast for?
I think it's
some
like
time.
7 to 10 minutes, something like
I
that.
thought it was longer.
It
But
can be. I mean, the kind of shit you see at
I
like
didn't realize that it was so hot.
Dunkin' Donuts, like that kind of dark roast where it's all
Yeah.
the oils.
Yeah.
That's like over roasted, so it tastes rancid, right?
Yeah.
What you have in your kitchen, he has Verve from
The Ethiopian,
Santa Monica, California. Verve,
Yeah.
which is I highly recommend trying that because they'll.
Oh, yeah.
they'll,
We'll link them in the description.
At least lately, they've been back to their 2-day free shipping. They got rid of that for a while.
I think a lot of companies are doing that right
Yeah,
now.
just because they know people are at home and they're just,
Yeah.
they're also trying to get business because their cafes are closed.
That's a great point, because if you go to a website like Verve and a lot of other roasters, like you say, they will ship out what they roast on that day. So I got it, I think, 3 days after it was roasted. They roasted and shipped the same day.
Let's say you order it at 8 p.m.
Which
at
is pretty
night.
sick.
That will be roasted at 5 a.m. the next morning
Yeah.
and shipped out that day.
Right. Yeah. Which is, and again, even from California, it's
2 days. Yeah.
Yeah, 2-3 days, no
But
problem.
coffee can be too fresh, right? Because I used to work at a brewery that roasted their own, and like the beans were awful the first day it was roasted.
And they
had
got
to, like,
better?
So the beans,
Yeah, they said they have to gas off for
the
a
beans
couple
are
of days.
if they're too fresh, they recommend grinding it. Let's say 20 minutes before you brew for filtered coffee, because if you have beans that you literally just roasted, there's so much CO2 in there that the brewing process will basically get fucked up, especially with espresso. There'll be way too much gas in there. But basically, yeah, beans degas over their lifetime. So like, let's say I'm on week 1 of coffee, I might have to loosen up the grind a bit on week 2. I used to have my friend's espresso machine. Shout out to Nathan and his Rancilio with the P, whatever the fuck you call it.
Rancilio, great guy.
Temperature control. So I had that in my kitchen and got to geek out. And that's where the subtlety of coffee brewing is at its like most important when you're doing espresso, because every minor thing makes
There's
a difference.
reason why probably almost everybody who's listening to this has only ever had really bad espresso.
Because it's really hard to make good espresso.
Yeah, you have to, like you say, there's so many little details that need focusing on in order to dial it in to.
Yeah,
but when you do, it's amazing. That's the ironic thing about espresso.
If you've never had espresso that made you stop and go, damn.
Yeah.
Then if that hasn't happened to you, then you haven't had good espresso.
Well, the problem
if
also,
you're a coffee drinker.
Well, the problem also is that I would say 99% of people probably haven't had really good espresso, but that's because 99% of them have probably only ever had espresso. And
right.
That's a much different
Let's just
product.
get that on the table.
Yeah, right.
If you say espresso, I give you 1 day, 24 hours to change that habit.
I agree with that.
If I hear you saying that shit to me again, I'm not going to do anything.
What are you going to do?
Nah.
Yeah. You're just going to be as much of a douche as you are now about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually stopped being a douche because whenever I would correct people, they would just look at me like, what? I'm like, whatever.
Did you really?
Yeah.
What would you say? How do you bring that up?
I was like, what do you need? Oh, we need 2 shots of espresso, because where I used to work before the pandemic days, me and Joe both worked at a similar place, same place. And people always say espresso there.
Yeah.
And so I'd just be like, I'm not sure what that is. And then they would just try to tell me, and like the joke never landed. So,
right, yeah.
Fuck me.
Because they clearly never even tried to spell espresso, let alone say it correctly. Yeah. Whatever.
So yeah, I highly recommend checking out the links I'm going to put in the episode notes for places that will
Allegedly
ship you freshly roasted stuff. But Johnny, you're right. The importance on how freshly roasted coffee is not as dire as, oh, you must consume it within 2 weeks. I've had coffee that's a month old and it's only gotten better. So some coffees are really harsh when they're freshly roasted, and like the lighter roasts especially, you'll get more of those high like acidic notes, and then as the coffee ages, it mellows out a bit and it becomes more round and balanced. So it really just depends on the coffee. But I love the fact that coffee changes over its lifetime. If you have like, let's say you order 2 bags from Verve at a time, then you go through it over the course of a month, each coffee will change.
Well, what's funny is really good beans too, because I visited Johnny Genie out in the West Coast over the winter break, and I brought
Portland has great coffee
Portland
shops.
has great coffee shops. Seattle has great coffee shops, and I brought back a few bags of beans with me, and they lasted quite some time. But after about a month or so, there was a day where I went to brew my fresh coffee, and I started sipping it, and I was like, lost its edge, lost its pop.
That's small batch, baby.
Yeah, it just got past that point where I was like, it's not popping anymore. It's still better.
Well,
than
or
the
you
Dunkin'
would have
Donuts
to
stuff,
make an
but-
adjustment to your brewing
which
to keep
you
it
do.
popping.
Yeah, but it's still even then it's more difficult to dial in almost.
It's hard to dial in coffee at home too. The biggest limiting factor for brewing at home is a grinder. I have a $230 grinder, and even then, I only have 40 options for a grind. So when you can't adjust at the level of, like, the grinder they use in most shops, specialty coffee shops, is called an EK43, and that shit, not only is every particle the same size, but you can make these micro adjustments that change your brew time from 3:15 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, and
or
that's
3
a huge
minutes
difference,
to 2:45 or whatever.
Or it can make a huge difference for sure.
I don't have the capability to do that with my grinder. I can get in the ballpark, and then you have to use like dosage and pour rate to change that shit. And look, you can still get a great cup at home, but it's just not as good as if you had the equipment.
Well, Johnny, you remember when we visited that place, Slate? Shout out to Slate Coffee Roasters in Seattle. Still to this day.
I had some of that.
Yeah, still to this day, my favorite coffee shop. And that was the first place I took Johnny in Seattle. I was like, yo, we have to check out Slate. And it's fair to say you were blown away by that coffee. That was really good coffee, right?
Oh yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
a lot of times they'll say that, oh, these are the flavor notes, like, you know, earth tones or blueberry or whatever. Theirs actually had those flavors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and for all the right reasons, because you can get a cup of blueberry coffee at wherever, but it's not for the right reasons. And if you really are paying attention, you'll realize, you'll say, oh yeah, that's just added sugar syrup or whatever.
If you've never been in the subtleties of beer, coffee, wine, you might not know that people talk about taste as notes, right?
Yeah.
There are tasting notes. And I remember when I got into specialty coffee around 2013, 14, and I started buying more equipment and brewing at home and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I would tell somebody who doesn't know about that stuff, like, oh yeah, this bean has notes of like blueberry and like whatever other, you know, and they'd be like, wait, there's blueberries in it? I'm like,
yeah.
I mean,
right.
No, but yes, because the thing that makes a blueberry taste like a blueberry is some kind of sugar, some kind of chemical balance of sugars. There's not added sugar in coffee, but there are various
there's a lot of added sugar,
various chemicals that in the roasting process get those, what are they called, Johnny? The Maillard reaction?
Maillard
reaction?
Maillard reactions. Yeah. Maillard.
And those get dissolved into the water when you brew, and so you get tasting notes that remind you of whatever thing those sugar profiles would be found in, like blueberries or strawberries or whatever.
Well,
candied this, candied
that's
that.
why I like to, the last day of class every semester, I do the coffee seminar where I bring in all my brew equipment and I try to get the best beans possible. And I show my students how to do a Chemex pour over. And the first thing that they always ask is, where's the milk and sugar? They're shocked by the idea that I'm going to just give them black coffee, because I would say out of the coffee drinkers in each class every semester, say like half the class drinks coffee, maybe only one or two of them drinks it black. And it's because of all the reasons we've said, where it's just over roasted Dunkin' Donuts coffee or something like
gas station coffee.
Yeah, that's purposely over roasted just to be consistent or whatever, or to make you want to add sugar.
What word would you use to describe, like one word that would accurately describe that kind of like gas station diner kind of coffee?
Mud. It's mud.
Burnt mud.
I would use the word rancid.
I mean, I think it's that kind of coffee makes people think they're coffee drinkers. This is where I redirect the podcast to be about beer, because I try to do that.
That's more than reasonable for a beer podcast.
And like, that's like, let's pick Coors Light. Doesn't taste like anything if you drink it at room temperature. That's why they say cold as the Rockies, because it has no flavor. Beer is supposed to have bitterness, noticeable bitterness, balanced out by like a little bit of malt sweetness. In my opinion, most styles, though, you notice that bitterness.
But those are your main things you're playing with.
Right, but people take an overly bitter coffee, and they do that, those gas station beans. I assume they do it so they're the same everywhere. If you burn them all to the same amount, then they're all the same amount of burn.
Yeah, I think it's just easier to roast it like
it's for
that.
Consistency and
but they also like Starbucks does it because they want you to buy.
Right.
But
the milk
they're not
cuts any of the bitterness.
Well, they're not
in the
making
drink,
money
and
off
then they
of
throw a bunch of sugar.
Yeah, a $2 cup of black coffee, but they are making money off a $6 mocha crappachoca. Bullshitachino, and now you're full of sugar and milk and sweetness, and you're going to want more. You're going to be more addicted on top of the caffeine to the sugar. And that's why you see, I mean, there's been days where I maybe go do some work at Starbucks. I have a cup of coffee, maybe like a muffin or something, and I see the same people come in 2-3 times over the course of
with their 4 pumps of
over
whatever.
the course of not that long, and because they work locally and they're like, oh, I get another break, I need a
it's just a coffee. It's like, no, that's a 400 calorie sugar filled piece of shit.
Yeah, it's 100 grams of sugar a day.
Do you guys remember when it was back when Starbucks was still cool? They stopped being cool sometime in the last
They were on the
10 years.
wave of specialty coffee, yeah.
But they were pretty cool for a while.
Second
and people
wave.
wouldn't say, I need coffee. They say, I need my Starbucks. I need my Starbucks to get through the day.
Yeah.
Because I need like 3 or 4. Because I get coffee other places and it tastes bitter. I get Starbucks and it's delicious and caramelly.
Yeah, but that's just sugar. That's not an actual secret remedy to the problem of shitty coffee.
But to make it about beer again, Yeah. So do you guys know how stouts or how porters and stouts and things like that got invented?
Ooh, no, but I'm curious because I love porters and stouts.
So there's a type of malt called a black patent malt. They still call it that. And a little history. In 1816, England had a lot of let's call them shucksters, I think is the term, brewers, where they would cheat and they'd use a little bit of malt and then they'd throw a bunch of caramel or burnt sugars or toffee or just cheap cane sugar and then dye it and then call it a brown ale or an amber or a porter or whatever. And you can live on beer. We won't go deep into this, but like, you can live on low percentage beers. Liquid bread, it's got vitamin B and stuff that you normally need to get from meat or other specific ingredients.
People did that for breakfast, right?
But yeah, you drank beer, low alcohol beer because it was safer than the water, and you nutritionally could live on it. Well, if you turn that into basically hard seltzer, truly hard seltzer.
Wait, like truly,
like stuff now, yeah, where there's no malt to it.
Did you mean to say truly?
For copyright reasons, no. It's with a Y. It's spelled the right way.
Yeah.
But yeah, those fuckers. And I think the hard seltzer craze is hilarious because like people used to die from drinking that kind of. It's prison hooch. It's got no actual nutritional value that beer does have, and that's a whole other argument we'll have, that beer is good for you, which I will have. But so this guy, the next year in 1817, he invented, because people used to throw like really burnt sugar or caramel in there to make dark beers, or you could throw some coffee or something. But they made a law you could only use malt and hops. So he learned from studying coffee roasters. He invented a drum roaster for malt making, and that was the answer. And the malt that came out of it, he had a patent on his roaster. It's called Black Patent Malt, and it kind of it's one of the main factors that led to the English porter style.
Interesting.
Which is an awesome beer. And you throw some roasted barley in there, boom, you got a stout.
Yeah. Are you drinking a coffee stout, by the way?
I am. I'm drinking a espresso milk stout from Elysian Brewing.
Oh yeah. We kind of forget to introduce the beer we're drinking, mostly because during the quarantine we switched to Miller Lite. I figured I can't go through a quarantine of coronavirus on craft beer.
Yeah,
I just can't do it.
And we needed to stop.
Money-wise and calorie-wise.
Having said that, the fridge is full of craft beer.
I know it's filled with craft beer because we haven't had it.
We've been drinking waters. We've been surviving on waters.
Yeah, we call Miller Lite waters.
Well, it's basically.
Mostly. It's like 95% water.
I mean, it's just a good calorie deal. 96 calories, I think.
Well, it's also, if I'm drinking, say I do have some craft beers, you definitely want to end the night with Millers. You don't want to start the night with Millers and end with craft beers.
Well, you want to sandwich it.
You want a Miller sandwich. To end with Millers.
Miller sandwich.
Miller sandwich.
Well, because I don't have a hangover if I end with Millers, because if I drink 3 or 4 Millers at the end of a night, it's as if I was drinking water, essentially.
It depends. Like if I'm starting the night eating something, like, oh, let's get some burgers, and then we'll go out drinking. I'm probably going to have a light beer.
I just love Johnny's standard night out. Well, yeah, you just pound some burgers.
Yeah, this is America, all right.
Yeah. Pound some burgers, pound some beers, and then go out drinking.
Yeah. Or let's grab a quick slice and then we'll go to the bar. It's like, well, I'm going to have a Miller Lite with that pizza. I don't want to start off by throwing an IPA and a pizza in my stomach and I'm going out drinking. So you have a couple of Millers with your slice of pizza. And then you go to the bar.
The first 2 cans
get some craft
really
beers.
Count.
Yeah, and then you get home. It's like, oh, let's crack another couple of Millers. And then you open one more after 2 or 3 home Millers. And then that's your shower beer. Like Miller Lite is one of the best shower beers.
How many beers did you just describe?
You don't have to worry about water getting in your shower beer.
We actually have a shelf for shower beers in our shower.
Same.
Works well.
Of course, me too.
I've only had a shower beer experience maybe a few times.
Oh, you're
one of them was in
shower coffee's
Tulsa.
Nice
it was
too.
great.
They're amazing. Yeah,
I took such a drunk shower in Tulsa.
Oh, also, folks, don't drink in the shower. You might slip and die.
Yeah.
What about
a joke? This is a comedy podcast. This is all scripted.
Yeah.
What about coffee in the shower? You ever do that?
Coffee in the shower? No, I actually have not.
Ooh. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's
I've had
nice.
a coffee and an orange in the shower. I've had a full meal in there.
Shower oranges are the way to go. I won't ever eat an orange outside of a shower.
You're on board with shower orange?
Of course, it makes sense.
That's so shocking to me. I would have thought
there's a drain in the floor. Why wouldn't I be?
I've literally written articles about the beauty of shower oranges, and I'm shocked because I would have thought that you would be so against me, Johnny.
It's awesome. Shower orange, probably with a Hefeweizen. That sounds really good.
Dude, it's amazing. Shower orange is the way to go. I recommend
have a nice shandy.
Everybody.
Shower shandies.
Yeah. Beach jigging in a shower shanty. All right.
Can I read a Jonathan Swift quote? Do you know Jonathan Swift?
Swift.
Oh, yeah, good guy.
All right.
He's
He
doing
was
some
that-
of his best work. He's being more and more recognized for the great work he does.
What was the famous piece he wrote? It was like
Gulliver's Travels. Oh
No.
no, that was Taylor Swift.
Gilligan's Island.
Just read the damn quote, Luke.
All right, so I have two quotes because like I wanted to look up who the guy was because I was like, wait, who the fuck is this guy? And then I found another quote which kind of makes you go, maybe the first quote's not so deep.
A guy I work with wrote the biography on Jonathan Swift.
Did he?
Yep.
No, it sounds like a Joe made up lie.
No, he wrote
No, that's not good enough to be made up. It's not interesting enough. It's probably true.
He listens to the podcast, so I'm very glad you just said that. He just published a 2-volume biography.
Awesome.
I'm just
All right.
Oh.
So
no,
the,
I'm kidding. It is true.
All right.
the quote.
So the quote is coffee makes us severe and grave and philosophical. And then the quote right under that was a fig for partridges and quails, ye dainties, I know nothing of ye, but on the highest mountain Wales would choose in peace to drink me coffee.
Me coffee.
He was Irish. Like
Well, that clears that up.
Johnny's playing with genie pipe.
That sounds weird. I do have an interesting thought about coffee. Somebody said to me years ago, and I think about it all the time, is like, you go into a coffee shop and it's a stimulant, right?
Yeah.
Like Luke was saying, you drink it to get your head straight so you can go and do things.
Yeah.
But you go into coffee shops and they're super quiet and they're super relaxing and calm. And then you go into a bar where it's stimulants and it's loud and exciting and there's lots of movement and energy. And it just
People
always makes me
counter
think,
where the drug is.
why? That
Yeah,
just
you-
be,
you
if you're
have to.
tired, then be tired. Why
I
do
think-
you have to?
I think the
because
modern
do the
coffee house
opposite
is
of the
not
effect.
what it was in like the 1700s and 1600s.
You think it was more rambunctious back
I think
then?
it was the reverse. Whoa. I think now breweries, like craft beer breweries, are kind of like the modern day version of what the coffee house was in the 1700s.
I don't think so.
Because those were loud, raucous,
What are you basing this on?
raucous places.
What
was that word?
Where people
No, what
would
was the
come
word,
together and give news and
Yeah,
exchange information.
I tried.
I don't know how to say that word.
Have you been to the breweries around here? You think people are going to exchange Enlightenment era information at the
No.
local
Well, he's
brewery?
talking about real cities. You guys live in a weird.
I'm
Neverland
also just talking about
suburb
the
of
energy, like whereas the coffee shops are now known as quiet places where you individually get your work done.
That's true.
They were the social, they were like the social centers of a city.
Yeah, the English ones we were talking about that Joe was talking about in the 1700s.
They called them
Like
penny
the-
universities.
Well, they also, that's before stock exchanges existed. There wasn't a stock market where you'd go and trade stocks. It was just, well, that's where the guys from the Dutch East India Company hang out, or Dutch West, whatever. They
And
hang
talk
out
about
at
their
that-
travels
at that
and-
coffee
and guess
shop.
what
So if
they
you
have?
want to go buy stocks, though, they got stocks. So if you want to go buy stock or trade or speculate, so they ended up becoming these business meeting, like these forums for business.
And they called them penny universities because it only took 1 penny. You had to buy a cup of coffee, and that was your entry fee.
That'd be great. A penny for a cup of coffee.
Yeah, but a penny was probably hard to come by back then.
Yeah, it's like a week's
the whole
pay
thing.
for
Yeah.
for a stevedore or something, you know.
So
you had to
in-
have wig money to afford coffee, right?
What money?
Wig money.
Oh yeah.
in J.S. Bach's time, the composer.
Great guy.
There was a very famous coffee house in Leipzig, Germany, called Zimmerman's Coffee House. It was started by the composer
Zimmermann's.
Telemann in 1702, and it was basically like what I had when I was in university. We had something called the Cabaret Collective. Did you ever go to that
I
show?
thought you were going to say coffee Tuesday, Thursday, but that's a whole.
We'll
other
talk.
thing.
We'll talk about that.
Oh yeah, the cabaret.
Did you ever go to that? You came a few times, right?
Is the thing at night that you would
Yeah.
sneak, like-
Describe the Cabaret Collective.
all I remember is that it happened every once in a while, and I would sneak in, sort of with.
No, there was no sneaking in though.
Well, I snuck in because it was fun.
No,
It
you
was
just
fun
came
enough.
in with
good to
me. If you
sneak.
call that sneaking,
I snuck in with a 6-pack of beer, and you just kind of sit there and get wasted.
you were allowed to drink beer.
You're taking all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
And it was just people doing. It was kind of like an open mic. It was
like an open mic, but of anything that you could
Anything.
imagine
Comedy,
in the art, theater, music,
music,
whatever world.
live theater,
Yeah.
whatever you wanted. Yeah,
And the idea was like
Poetry.
it was on campus, and it was always on a Friday night. Let's say a few
that
times
was
a
cool.
semester.
Yeah, that was really fun.
You'd bring a 6-pack or whatever down there, and you would sit there if you're not participating and just watch various things. One of my favorite things was this physics PhD student did like a dramatic performance of like the history of time from the Big Bang.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
yeah.
he was like walking across the
Yeah.
stage and he's like, if this stage is the timeline,
Yeah.
and he clearly had some like theater or drama in his background. But like, to me, that was what this Zimmermann coffee house in Leipzig in the 1700s would be like, because they would have these concerts there where people, the entry fee was just to buy some coffee. And then they would put on...
It's like a 1 drink minimum.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And they would put on shows. And I think in that time, whereas now we're like, why would I go to the Cabaret Collective if I'm not going to get a little drunk? Like,
Right,
then it was
yeah.
kind of like, oh, life is so harrowing
Yeah.
and awful that I want to stimulate my brain and listen to Bach.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, now
or whoever was
now I can just do
performing.
that in my underpants at home. Everything you just said.
Yeah, but it
Which
so
is sad.
it was like the elites of the city would meet there, and women were not allowed in coffee shops, but they were during Bach's concerts at the coffee house.
That'd be weird trying to pick up a chick in that. What would be the best line for that? Did they have pickup lines in the 1700s? How did that work?
Well, funny enough, one of the pieces Bach wrote for one of these events at the coffee house was a coffee cantata. He wrote a lot of religious music, but he
pronounced
wrote a lot of
cortado.
secular music too.
Yeah.
And so one of the secular pieces he wrote was called Coffee Cantata. So the whole thing is basically about a dad who is banning his daughter from drinking coffee. And she really wants to keep drinking coffee. And the father doesn't know how to get her to stop. And then finally goes, I've got it. I will not find you a husband until you quit coffee. And then she's like, fine, I'll quit coffee. I want a husband. Go find me a husband. And she secretly tells all the men that are potential suitors, I'll only marry you if you agree that you'll make me coffee every morning. I mean, this is just
That's some really weird cultural insight to the times, though, right? That's kind of cool. I like
Father, don't be so hard. If 3 times a day I can't drink my little cup of coffee, then I would become so upset that I would be like a dried up piece of roast goat. If you don't give up coffee, you won't be going to any wedding, says the father, and you won't go out walking either.
These are horrifically dry lyrics, dude. I
Well,
shall
it's the-
be like a dry goat
It's
meat.
German,
Oh, okay.
you know. And then the ending
Oh,
of
yeah.
the whole cantata ends with all 3 characters singing the moral of the story that, okay, drinking coffee is natural.
So they're fucked up.
That would
is
be
what
like
you're
our
saying.
current version of like the brewery like Bach cantata. I wish Bach would conduct like a craft beer cantata. Whoa. All right, Nathan, if you're listening to this, I'm going to get you to write craft beer cantata. That's a brilliant idea. And we're going
That
to put it
should
on
be a
at like a
thing.
cool brewery.
I mean,
And the moral is going to be us all cheersing craft beer and going like drinking craft beer is natural.
Or it could start out as an argument between like a beer drinker, like a craft beer drinker and a macro beer drinker,
Yeah, yeah.
or like between a beer drinker and a wine drinker.
Or in
Or
this
beer-
case, it
beer,
could just be
wine,
like,
cider,
we think
and
you're
then
an
the craft beer
alcoholic, you
guy
should stop
comes.
drinking craft beer.
that is funny that you mentioned that, because there are. It's really weird. Do you find this as well, that the sort of quote unquote rivalries between vices are usually among people who are kind of they're really not quite getting it? Because I've seen this with people where they rip on wine drinkers, and wine drinkers rip on craft beer drinkers, and
Or beer drinkers in general.
yeah. And the others all
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that
but
the
they
others are
started
snooty and losers, and it's like
I do it too, but only because they started it.
Right, exactly.
I
But-
think everything that you get into risks becoming snooty.
Yeah, you risk doing it just to be an expert at it.
It's hard to
shove
draw
it in
that line,
people's
too.
face, right? Because we've all done barista work, except for Tommy. I don't think. Have you done any barista?
Nope.
Yeah, but you could.
Yeah, it doesn't look too hard.
Yeah, see? And that's sort of the
It
point.
actually is really hard.
But that's what I mean. We've
Can
all
I
figured
tell you
it
guys
out.
a
The fact that us 3 bozos have figured it out and probably do it fairly well compared.
I mean,
to
I
maybe
think it
other
does take
bozos.
intelligent people to do anything really well.
Yeah, but I'm
there
saying
there
that
are more
you can
shitty
figure it
baristas
out.
in the world than great baristas.
But I'm saying that people who think that they are just naturally genius at it because they got good at it, I think that's sort of just being a superlative type person to do it.
Having said that, have you ever watched the Specialty Coffee Association competitions or like the World Barista Championships?
I'm not
that's
even sure
where you
those
go, all right, there just
phrases
like
are
there are
real.
people that are naturally gifted towards violin or piano or writing.
Yeah.
There are people that are just like weirdly shaped to be brilliant
Oh, for
and
sure.
creative at being a barista.
Oh, for sure. But I just mean that I know people who craft beer as an example who are really into craft beer and they didn't used to be, and now if you try to sell them on a different type of beer, if you try to tell them, yo, you should check out this awesome Pilsner, they'll be like, Pilsners aren't good beers. And you're
So
like,
when people say
"Wait,
shit like
you
that, they're
don't-"
just advertising their stupidity and their ignorance,
Indignance.
and or they're trying to signal,
doing
it clumsily.
But they do know a lot about the beers they like. They might actually know a lot about IPAs. But to say to get so far into that niche to be like that is what beer is, or that is what that sort of craft industry
So-
is very sort of just missing the point, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I'm more like about like all level of wine drinkers personally
See,
than I am about like Bud Light beer drinkers. I'm like, yeah, man, shotgun one with me, sure, whatever. Like I respect beer drinkers at all levels.
yeah.
And most wine drinkers.
But that's what I mean.
too.
But Johnny,
you're,
are
you're
you-
a brewer, but you'll drink Miller
But-
Lite.
Well, I think it's a human condition. It takes it comes on as a part of your identity at this point. Like you identify with
you
beer
guys-
as part of your life, right, John? You're
well,
engrossed
yeah,
in
I'm
it.
more,
Yeah.
I'm more beer than
You're
man.
embedded in it.
Would you identify with musical attributes in your life?
I suppose so.
Yes, you
We've
would.
tried-
Joe,
I feel like I'm on the,
Yes,
the
Your-
witness
yes,
stand.
Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
would you identify with writing and English language or arts really in your life, right?
Can you repeat the question, Your
So
Honor?
when you're involved in that, and if somebody starts to say, "Oh, well," they start to break
You
down
get defensive very quickly.
Yeah, you get defensive. It's just, I think, part of a human condition.
Yeah, but I'm willing to
Well-
admit that I'm actually a shitty writer, or I'm an idiot.
And a lot of people can't
shitty
do
brewer.
that.
no, that's what I mean.
There's a small
and what I
group
tell
that can.
what I tell my students is that the only reason, because they'll tell me, "Oh, you're a really good writer," whatever, and I tell them the only reason why I might be quote unquote better of a writer than you are is because I've been sucking at it so much longer than you have.
Do you know what you're describing? It's called the
What have you been
Dunning-Kruger effect in psychology. It means like when you know a little bit of something, you can run the risk of accidentally becoming cocky and arrogant
right.
and like thinking like you want to signal like I have studied something about wine or I
do
find
know,
this more
I
with
do know
wine
this.
drinkers,
yeah,
right?
because you can say I do know this and you don't.
Yeah,
right.
But that's the subtext behind what a lot of people do and act and say when they're talking about wine or specialty coffee is
Yeah.
they're just trying to say like I've put some time into studying this,
Right.
and they're missing the point. And I've talked to some baristas that really the point is whether it's craft beer, craft coffee, specialty coffee, wine, whatever. It's if you're in the service industry and you're making drinks for customers, make what they will enjoy. If the best cup of coffee you can make someone is one where they enjoy it, that's it. If
Yeah,
they want to
but-
put cream in your specialty coffee, let them do it. If they enjoy it, you succeeded at your job. That's number one job. There's none of that cuntiness and cockiness. See what I did? I put both genders genitals.
What,
in
what
there.
about like a
Keep
what
going.
about like a top cuisine chef that makes a delicious meal and then
And then I
customer
put, like-
douses it in ketchup?
Yeah,
honey
exactly.
mustard.
That would be the equivalent thing. Look, it's not ideal. And I would, as the chef or as the barista, I would say, I'm glad you enjoyed your drink. I encourage you next time, if you take a few sips of it before you add the cream, you might notice some subtle notes of blueberry.
What if they
or
say, "Go
pecan
fuck
or
yoo-self,
something.
don't tell me how to drink my coffee," and they
feel
pour
like
yoo-hoo in?
that's
I would
how
say
most
that's a
people
weird
respond.
reaction considering the very measured advice I just gave you.
does
in a
that
friendly way.
person?
Well, most people
does
are
that
gonna say, "Who the
person-
fuck are you to tell me how to drink my coffee?"
Right.
That's what most.
Well,
people are
actually,
saying,
coffee's one of the only examples where
think it,
you're
yeah.
getting
Right,
it from
yeah.
the. You're getting it from the guy making it, and maybe the guy who even roasted it.
Might know
Rarely
what
does
they're
anyone
talking
ever
about, yeah.
meet the brewer who made their beer or the vintner who tended to the wine. You're just talking to a bartender who's serving it to you.
Yeah.
He probably does know more than the average person. If
But he
they
might
serve
also
it.
just be like, that's on tap.
It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, what's
But-
that beer?" And he's like, sour. I think it's red."
I don't know, like a sour is a good example. Like a good sour beer. There's different types of sours. Is one of the newer ways
Sours.
of craft beer. But sours, there's different ways to sour. You can do it through time, and like building up an actual culture of yeast and bacteria, and that could take years to sour one batch. Or you do a kettle sour, which can take like a day, and then you just make a beer. So if you're like, oh, I made a traditional sour, and somebody just chugs it instead of tasting it and goes, that's good, give me another, I think you have the right to say, no, that's a waste of the beer, I'll give you some, you can have something else. But like even if you're willing to pay for it, like I think you have the right as a creator to say, I don't want you, if you're going, you can enjoy this wrong.
Well,
I think that's fair.
I think it's fair to point it out that, oh, hey, yeah, you're going to miss out on this. It's an experience.
No, but I feel like I could say, no, you don't get another one of those. You didn't do it right.
I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's your product. You can deny people service as long as you're not, because like, oh, also, I don't like your ethnicity.
You black bastard. Isn't that what Liam Neeson said?
Does he? Oh, yeah, he did say that. That's right.
Anyways, although you guys just did this with coffee. You guys just badmouthed Starbucks drinkers at the beginning of this cast and gas station coffee. So you're doing, oh, yeah, I want Luke to hear this.
I mean,
wait for him to get his headphones back.
I mean, I'm not bashing them. I'm just pointing out that they're not as good as a lot of people think. A lot of people think they have misconceptions about what is possible. And that's my point with black coffee. People think that black coffee is this one thing. And in fact, I have a sample size. I have every semester, like I said, when I do my coffee seminar, I have students who one or two of them are maybe black coffee drinkers. And by the end of the seminar, I've converted some of them where they say, this is crazy. I didn't know that black coffee could taste like
One
this.
of the reasons people are stubborn about that is coffee is a routine thing every day.
Sure.
And people get into a routine.
That's the other thing
you're
they say.
fucking
They're
with
like,
that routine.
Yeah, and that's the other thing they say, that even if you do a V60, which is relatively quick.
It's a brewing device.
Yeah.
It's a pour over.
It's to make a single cup of coffee, essentially, as opposed to a bigger setup or rig. They'll say, wait, that took you 5 minutes, and I'm like, how much longer is you have to value how much is that longer than just putting nonsense
now
in
at any
coffee
point in
maker?
your life were you a coffee drinker that would put something in their coffee?
Me, no.
Yes.
When I first started drinking
coffee,
coffee, I would put French vanilla in it.
Yes,
It just
yes.
tasted like
I put
garbage
the
to me.
hazelnut creamer in it.
Hazelnut and French vanilla,
Yeah.
and it was delicious. And after like a year of it, I was like, well, why don't I just drink it with? I'm out of it. I'm out of the creamer. I was like, well, I guess I'll just drink it without it. I was like, wow, this tastes fine without it.
Yeah.
And I just didn't drink.
You
it
guys
after
remember
that.
what our father used to plop in his black coffee at dessert?
Di Serono.
No. It was a food thing to drink. I mean, that's great too.
It was very good.
A food?
No, he dropped frozen Charleston chews to
Did
cool
he
it
really?
down. Yeah, he used to drop a few in to make. He's like, it gets it all mocha-y. And the nougat just thickened it. Yeah,
That's actually not a bad idea. That is in fact my theory when I make something like a mochaccino, for example, which is basically a chocolate cappuccino. When in doubt, because what are people really asking for when they want a mochaccino? Sweetness. So when in doubt, just more chocolate. Just add more chocolate.
Again,
you don't want to make it under chocolate.
A mochaccino can be a delicious drink, right?
It is
I
a
happen to
delicious drink.
love
I actually really like
espresso and milk that has been steamed properly. Like milk that has been steamed properly.
You said that like such a piece of shit. Milk that has been steamed properly.
And look, this is the risk you run when you talk about anything specialty.
So you don't deny it, do you, sir?
I that was not my intention, but I can understand that it was received that way.
Your Honor.
You sound like
I sound like I'm in quarantine relationship mode. I'm being very careful about what I say and how it's received.
Luke's just practicing for going back upstairs later to his current fiance.
Oh God.
So
are we? Okay, go ahead. I have a segment I want to propose that I think we all have enough stuff for.
Okay.
Go for it.
If you had something else to say.
I was just going to quickly say, like, on the being like getting accused of being like, oh, like what's the point of like brewing just one cup and it takes you 5 minutes? I was making pasta at my friend's house a couple weeks ago, and we were like making the dough, putting it through the pasta roller
faster.
Every step. It took about like 30 minutes, right, to just get the pasta out, and then it was a much more complicated thing. My friend's dad comes downstairs and goes, you know, they make pasta in a box now. Like that was his input.
Yeah.
And
fresh pasta is really good.
That to me is the equivalent of somebody coming up to me and being like, you know, they make coffee that you just plop in the machine and you come back downstairs after you shower.
They came up with it in the 1700s.
And the coffee's just ready.
Dr. Maxwell House.
You guys know a drip pot. A drip pot pours water over the coffee, and you don't have to stand there like a jackass. They do have that
It
technology.
does not, unless you buy an extremely expensive drip pot with a mobile pour head. It doesn't come anything close to the ability with a gooseneck kettle to pour over at the exact rate and evenly distribution that you can get with a pour over coffee.
I feel like you could make
Manually.
one if you find an engineering grad student.
There is one.
and-
They
and
do
you
one
buy
with a
some
Chemex.
equipment.
There-
No, I know, but
yeah.
I'm sure you could make one.
There's also, if you go to the Specialty Coffee Association of America website, SCAA.org, they have a bunch of.
Where did you pull that from?
It's a website. You can check it on the internet.
You just said that way too fast.
I'm on that
Haughty
website
Luke.
all the
I love
time,
the
bro.
sense of Haughty
Yeah.
Luke.
Okay.
He's also been drinking a lot of coffee.
Six
this past
coffee
week.
coffee.
Yeah, no, it sounds like
I
you know
can have as
exactly
many
where
cafe
you're
lattes as I want. You can't stop me.
It says right here.
They have a list of approved like home coffee machines that they basically, if you are a company that wants to make a coffee machine, you submit your
and it gets
machine
their-
to them
their
and they'll
douchebag
approve it
of a-
or not.
Douchebag seal. of
Look, the
approval.
whole thing again runs the risk of being douchebaggy, but just like the pasta thing, if you've not had homemade pasta, then I recommend doing it. It's
Yeah.
so much better than boxed pasta.
Well,
it just is.
But it's also
and same with coffee.
it really does point out sort of where different people are at, because I'm always curious by when I do the fancy coffee seminar how and who's going to be converted by it. And you see some students are genuinely really surprised by it, and others some people just don't like the taste of coffee at all.
Some people are just surprised, like, I didn't know this was a thing.
Yeah.
Some people are surprised that you are doing it in class, and they're
No,
like,
they're
"What the
never
fuck's
they're
happening?"
never surprised by anything I do
Okay,
in class at
yeah,
that point.
fair enough.
They're just like, thank God he's
because
not
it's the
talking
end of the
about
semester. They already know you.
Yeah, they already know too much.
Yeah.
Well, that's my what I do is the first day of class I wear like a jacket and nice pants and nice shoes, a tie, the whole outfit, and slowly over the course of the semester I lose the tie first, then I lose the jacket, then I eventually switch to jeans, and by the end I have like a t-shirt,
There's no
and sneakers,
pants.
and my Yang hat backwards, ruined coffee in class, and they say, yeah, that we know this by now.
You're like, I get fired every semester and rehired.
Yeah,
so,
I lower the expectations
Yeah, that's-
slowly over time. And now I just tell them it's like a relationship. This is just
That's
what you have to look
really,
forward
when you
to.
describe it that way, it sounds like a horrifying quarterly Groundhog's Day.
Essentially, yeah.
Well, it's kind of like farting policy in relationship. On like the first
Go
6
on.
months, you don't fart at all, and eventually you're like, I have to fart, and not farting will make me uncomfortable. I'm gonna fart.
I'm gonna let it rip.
Yeah. And then the guy always starts farting first. If there's any sexism left in this society, it's the fact that guys, it's more allowable for guys to fart than girls.
If there's any sexism left in society, this is it.
That's just a causal
That's what you're saying.
if-then statement.
I've literally in the past
I didn't
week,
say any opinion on whether there is or isn't.
I've literally seen you in the past week let farts rip loose, horrific farts in front of your current fiance.
And I've heard my current fiance let farts rip loose in front of me. And around it goes, Joe.
All right, Johnny, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, Johnny, give us a
All
topic
right,
change here.
Well, I got
Jesus.
two things.
Sorry,
uh,
Yanka.
I have a
Sorry,
segment
current
I want to
Yonka.
do, but and I'll just throw the name of the segment out. I don't have to explain it, and then I actually want to mention something
All
coffee
right.
culture related. But I think we should do like a brewing sins or coffee sins, because you mentioned barista work, and I immediately remembered some horrifying things I've seen people do to their coffee or with their coffee.
Yeah.
And I feel like you've all done it enough coffee stuff. You can think of something horrific somebody's done. So let's just think about that and try to think of a good coffee horror story.
Gotcha.
But I also, while you're thinking of that, mulling it in the back of your mind, I wanted to mention something I found interesting, which is there's such a big difference in the East Coast, West Coast culture. But and I'm working on a theory here. So in the East Coast, I'm talking about like business working people who get up and do stuff every day. There's coffee. You get your coffee in the morning, right?
Yeah.
You get your booze at night, beer, cocktail, whatever, to like relax and take the edge off. And there's lots of cigarette smoking in the East Coast, I feel like. I think there's just more than out here. Smoking
Yeah.
is it's a quick release, easy thing to get. So those are all very jittery causing, or two of them are very jittery uppers, like caffeine and cigarettes. And I wonder how much of that contributes to the New York accent or the New York pace. When you start talking really fast and doing your coffee voice, Joe, I totally understood you because I grew up around you and people who just talk too fast, move too fast in the Northeast all the time. So there's no problem with
That's
that.
pretty good,
But then-
Johnny.
Thank you. But then you come to the West Coast and everyone's way more laid back, and coffee is bigger out here than there. But if you need like to relax and unwind, you can go get a craft beer. You don't have to pick a PBR or a shot. which I feel like it's a lot of bars in New York at least.
But it's also better coffee.
It's better coffee. It's more enjoyable. It's less of a drug and more of an enjoyment, which I would say the same for their beer out here. And you can go smoke a joint instead of a cigarette if you need to relax.
I think that's
like
probably
a CBD joint.
I think that's probably
you up too much.
Well, we have CBD now too, but I think that's probably a bigger factor.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so much of it is there's so many factors, and if you go back historically, I think that there's a lot here in terms of just the East in general. This is where people immigrated to, and this is where stuff had to get done. This is where you had to set up the business centers, right?
I think there's bigger things other than coffee that made the culture New York versus West Coast.
Yeah.
Whereas if you made it here on the wagon, you were able to just like take a breath and relax.
Yeah, you're like,
whatever.
Jesus.
Yeah, you're like,
well, it's
you're
still
like,
better than
not
the
worth
Rockies,
being
so
stressed
relax.
about. Yeah, exactly. Because even places like Boston, I mean, New Yorkers and Bostonians, whatever, hate each other, but they're way more similar to each other than a New Yorker is to a Seattleite.
It also has to do with the weather more than anything, I think. Like, it's cold in New York in the winter. It's cold in Boston. It makes you just kind of have this, God fucking damn it, like, it's cold. I got to get shit done.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even as far north as Seattle is, it's in Portland. They're part of that weird West Coast microclimate on this side of the Rockies. Our winters really are pretty mild. I mean, they're not Southern California mild, but they're definitely not New England harsh.
Yeah.
So
it's ironic.
It probably is, but
the water never gets quite warm as New York, but the winters never get quite as cold.
right.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a stark difference in energy, like in speed, I guess. A lot of people from the South who like come to New York will be like if you're driving in New York City, it's a very different experience than driving in Atlanta or something.
I love having grown up in New York and having at a relative. I mean, there's been times that I've driven in New York. I lived in New York City for a while, and now whenever I go to any other city in the country so far, I think the one I've been to that's almost as crazy is actually Dallas. Maybe they drive like lunatics I think they're worse drivers than in New York because New Yorkers. I don't know why people think we don't use signals, but compared to other people in places like Dallas, we use our signals a hell of a lot more. But if you go to Seattle and you see their version of what they call traffic, it's laughable.
Oh yeah,
it's still traffic, but I'm sitting there thinking, I'll take this every day in New York.
If you know traffic from New York, or God forbid, like a city like Istanbul, where traffic is just insane,
or
and
LA.
then you go to like
LA is probably the other one, but I've always been there.
Everyone says LA is worse. I've never driven in LA.
I think it is. It's just
people from New York I know.
Have you seen those shots of the highways in LA when it's like rush hour? It's like insane.
Yeah, right.
It's crazy. I mean, this is why Kobe Bryant is dead, is because of LA
Christ.
traffic.
Wow, that was a leap.
Isn't that though?
I mean, there's just a more tactful way.
He got a
to say
helicopter because of the traffic.
Yeah, he claimed that because he was so rich that he was like, if I have to drive to pick my daughter up from school, like by the time he got home or you know what I mean? Like he'd be like, I have to go to practice. I don't get. He got more time with his kids if it was a 40-minute chopper ride instead of a 2-hour car ride. So yeah, but there's just a tactful way to say it, Luke.
I think
killed Kobe Bryant.
I think dense fog killed Kobe Bryant.
Well, I mean, it comes down to like that butterfly effect thing. You could say the Big Bang killed Kobe Bryant, like
and that's what you probably should have said. That would have been more tactful.
All right, so do you guys have any coffee horror stories?
I've
I
got
have two
one,
come straight to mind.
I don't know what you mean by coffee horror stories. So
have
let
you
me give
seen
you an
somebody
example.
or been the participant in some kind of situation where
I have one, Luke.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have an example. So I was working at this place. They sold beer, food, wine, everything, but they used to have a deli, so they still had a commercial coffee pot. You know, the 3-burner ones with the big, like you see in a diner.
Yeah.
With the orange big glass things, the drip pots. And
one
it's got
part
the
of it
orange
brews,
one
the other
for the
parts have
decaf.
hot plates, right?
Yes, it's exactly one of those.
Yeah.
So they still had it, and they would just make coffee every morning. They still sold it. Like nobody ever bought it. It was mostly for the staff. But
one pot a day kind of vibe.
Yeah, pretty much. You sold a cup or two for like $2 each. It paid for the pot, pretty much, I guess. So they did that. But my first week, the guy showed me. I was like, "Oh, where's the?" Because I couldn't figure out how to turn it on and stuff because it was so old and broken. You had to do it a certain way. And he was like, "Oh, here, let me show you. Just watch me do it. I'll show you." And so he grinds the beans, pours them in. I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Yeah, you fill up the pot from the faucet there, and then just pour it in the top, and it'll auto brew." I was like, "Okay." And I started doing it. He goes, "No, use that faucet." And I was like, "What?" Because he's pointing at the hot water handle. And I'm filling up from the faucet already. He's pointing at it. It's like, I am. He goes, no, use the hot one. That way the water gets real hot. I was like, you brew with hot tap water? He's like, yeah, I like my coffee really hot. Those burners take a while to heat up. Like, but you're gonna be drinking all the metal from the pipes and from your water heater, and like it was an old building, like 100-year-old building. And I was like, you really shouldn't drink hot water from the tap ever.
The water is going to get to the brewing temperature, whether it's cold water. It's like if you're making pasta,
I thought maybe it was so broken you had to do that. So I was like, no, I'll use cold water, and it was fine. It was perfectly hot water. Like it would have burned my mouth.
It gets up
if
to
I
the
drank
temperature
it right
no matter what the input temperature
right.
was.
But this maniac,
but I like it hot.
This maniac, and he's a great guy, but he's a goddamn maniac when it comes to coffee making. Just uses hot tap water, and he's been working there like 20 years. It's like, dude, you've been just drinking hot tap water in your coffee beans. And I went in one day, I was a little late, and he had already made the coffee, and I took a sip, and I was like, something's off. And then I was like halfway through, I realized like, I'm drinking water heater coffee right now.
Yeah. You can definitely you'll taste the difference between
there's fucking lead in that.
Yeah,
coffee.
shitty tap water. If you even brew a Chemex with, the coffee's going to taste like shitty tap water.
Speaking of SCAA.org, they have guidelines for various things about brewing. One of them is, as you know, Johnny, from brewing beer, the perfect water to brew coffee with is like the pH has to be 7 ideally, but it can be as high as 8. The hardness of the water, there are specifications. I think it's like for the calcium, I forget what the numbers are off the top of my head, but you can actually buy brewing water from companies that already have dissolved the chemicals in there.
Just make it yourself at home.
But you can also make it yourself at home by buying chemicals.
Right.
Just don't buy the wrong chemicals and get on like the terrorist watch list or something like that.
You're not getting on a list for buying calcium carbonate.
It's true, yeah. But there are actually recipes. I think Matt Perger, who's one of my favorite baristas, I'll link him in the episode notes, has like a recipe online for making a concentrate of water that you dilute with like
that's cool.
8 parts tap water, filtered water.
Yeah. Like
distilled water, let's say. You have to actually buy distilled water if this is going to work. 8 parts distilled water, 2 parts like whatever you brew with this calcium and magnesium shit, and that will change your brewing. If you're already a good brewer at home, that will like really make you consistent.
Nice.
Because tap water, you never know what the fuck's coming out of there.
Well, before you brew anything with your water, coffee, beer, wine, any sort of crafty thing you're getting into at home, go online or call your local municipality if they don't have a website. They're too small, and they're required to do a water quality report or water quality analysis report. It'll have some name like that, and they'll send you or email you a print up of all those things in the water, but also it'll include lead and
chlorine.
Chloramines, chlorine, undesirable stuff, but the stuff you actually want to know: your hardness, your alcohol, your acidity, your pH. Thank you, Tommy. And that's key for beer brewing, because a lot of styles are based on the water of the area.
Yeah.
Like IPAs are really hard because English well water was really chalky in southern England. Pilsners are super soft because Czech Republic had really soft
that's the funny
water.
thing is that New Yorkers are so what would you call it, snooty about their pizza being the best in the planet, in the universe. But they oftentimes, the argument I hear is because we have the best water, whatever that means. I think it's just
it doesn't really. It doesn't.
Well, we have different water compared to a lot of other places, but
it plays into the obsession that somehow New York is geographically special.
Oh, so like a geodag.
Well, Joe, they don't want the fact that New York bagels or pizza are really good. They don't want that to be like, oh, there's just a way you can do the same thing in San Francisco. They want it to be like, there's something about being on the soil of New York that makes it good.
Wasn't there a place in North Carolina that shipped water down to make New York style bagels with New York water, right?
Yeah, and there's some places on the West Coast where they treat the water. Like Luke's saying,
but that makes sense.
Well, most specialty coffee shops
get
intense filter systems so that the water that they use to brew and that goes into their espresso machines has already been treated to be the specifications that they want.
Portland,
you don't want
crazy
distilled
water
for coffee. You need some dissolved solids in there.
Yeah,
they call it
Portland
TDS.
We have crazy soft water here. and it's great for starting with because so
it's great for
easier to add
drinking,
stuff.
just like the taste of drinking water, right?
Well, I just mean to use to make coffee or to make beer
Yeah.
or whatever.
It's a
because
great start,
It's,
yeah.
it's more of an empty canvas. It's so much easier to add minerals.
If you
and
start with
stuff
really
to
hard
your-
water, like what they have in the Philadelphia
Yeah.
area, you need to get like an expensive filter to get that
a
out.
reverse osmosis nonsense.
Yeah, shit drives you
Yeah.
crazy. That's why they killed Hitchbot.
I don't know
Yeah.
what any of the words you just said were.
I do though.
Rest in peace.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's good.
rest
They have
in
to
power.
grease their fucking street poles there.
Do you guys? They do.
I heard about that. Yeah.
There's something in the water. That's all
we
I'm
should
saying.
we should do a Philly cast at some
A
point.
Philly cast. Yeah. Well,
They're special people. They deserve it.
we love you, Philly fans.
Of course. We should. I
Did you
got
see
family in
Biden
Philly.
with his
It's a great
Philly
city.
hat on recently in the interview?
No.
So Biden had his Philly hat on. He was on Jimmy Kimmel like a couple nights ago.
Really?
And he was like, "Well, I got." So Kimmel had
to
a
do with
Mets hat on, and he was like, "Oh, like you're wearing a Phillies hat." And Biden, in his awkward old age senility, because he might be president, said, "Well, if I don't wear my Phillies hat, I can't sleep with my wife." And then there was like an awkward
There's such
pause.
a better way to tell that little joke, you know?
Yeah, like he could have
I'll
just
have
said,
to
"My
spend the
wife
night
will
on the
make me
couch."
sleep on the couch" or something.
Yeah, right.
But he made it sound like he can't bang his wife, and it's like you're not banging anything. You're barely
you
you're
know-
barely aware of
Do you know
that.
what, do you know what Biden's
Oh no,
problem is?
Joe gets after Dynamite Joe. He gets after. He's a very sensual man.
Do you know what Sleepy Joe's problem is?
He doesn't have enough coffee.
He needs a cup of coffee. If you're listening,
Way to
Joe
bring it
Biden,
back, Joe.
if Joe Biden is listening, we love you, Joe. And we will send you coffee if you share our podcast on Twitter. Can you imagine if Joe Biden?
If Joe Biden
tweeted
tweets out this
episode?
podcast, he will win my vote.
He will. Win
I will.
all our
I will
votes.
literally eat a ceramic cup of coffee if he does that. Like
Johnny,
the whole
I wouldn't
mug.
do that. He might accidentally. It's entirely possible.
might.
Should-
Do you guys have any more coffee sins that you could think
Oh,
of?
I got-
'Cause
I got-
have one.
yeah, I got
I have
mine,
another
yeah.
one.
I got
All right,
one.
tell me yours then.
All right, so I have two. Joe, you'll identify with one of them, so
Okay.
I can give you the little spark that gets yours going. But I was at a coffee shop once, and it's close by one. Sometimes they do good things, but this particular time, the owner, I was drinking a cup of coffee. My
He
friend was
seasoned
drinking a cup of coffee, and it was a little bit, as Larry David would say, not hot enough. He didn't stick his nose in it to find out, but it was still not hot enough. And the owner of the coffee shop goes, "Oh yeah, like just give me that." And he brings it around back, puts it in the steam wand, and steams the hot coffee. I mean, steams the coffee to make it hotter, which just makes the coffee taste like rancid. I mean, you're just pumping steam into something that's 99% water, 1%
Yeah.
coffee, dissolved solids.
I just remembered the
it just makes it taste burnt and gross.
the ongoing coffee nightmare, that other one that you're probably referring to, which is just dirty steam wands in general.
Yes, dirty steam wands. So where Joe and I work, we're the
Clean-
only
what's your
ones that
steam wands,
clean
kids?
the
What's
steam
a
wand.
steam wand? Is that like a Harry Potter device, but
If only.
the cyberpunk type?
No, it's basically a
1800s?
masturbation device for wizards.
A steam
Wizardesses.
wand? That's horrifying. I meant like, geez. I thought it was like a
Oh,
wand.
that's
that
actually
was
a
like
really
coal powered.
That's actually a really good. So anybody, this is what I tell my class too. Anybody, next time you go into any coffee shop, first thing you do, lean over by their espresso machine.
Take a look at the steam wand.
Take a look at the steam wand. If it's white, walk out of the coffee shop.
walk out. I
Just
agree.
walk out.
I agree.
If it's silver, if it looks like metal, you might have a chance.
Let's actually go through a
Well,
few.
why?
Like,
Explain why
I'll
to
explain
the
why.
listeners.
The next level, I would say, is when they go to clean the steam wand. Do they use the same towel they wipe the counter down with, or is there a specific steam wand?
There should be a
towel.
steam wand towel, and that's fine.
And that's a deeper thing to look for. And if you don't see that and it's white, yeah, get it the hell out of it.
I have those the little like mental notes, and
If it's white, it ain't right.
actually
Right, Luke?
on my
That
friends.
sounds like a very good anti-racist chant.
This did not
Very
happen
good.
to me, but this happened to my friend. But there are various checkpoints that if a coffee shop is not meeting a standard, you not only want to not drink the coffee because it will taste bad, but potentially you want to not drink the coffee because you'll get sick. So if
Yeah,
somebody
right.
takes milk that was already steamed,
Please
adds
don't
a little bit of
phlegm
fresh
cough
milk,
into the microphone.
cold milk
Thank
to
you.
it. What'd you say?
Please don't phlegm cough into the microphone. That was gross.
Oh, you think you're going to catch corona over the internet?
No, just
No, I
sounds
just don't want
like,
to hear it.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, my throat's been hurting. I've been like a little sore lately. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
dear God.
Nobody cares.
So basically, I forget what the reaction is, but if you steam milk and then pour a drink with it, and let's say most of the time you have about a third of the pitcher left with milk after you make an espresso and milk type drink, you have to get rid of that milk. It's a waste of milk, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
If you re-steam that milk,
Do people do
It'll
that?
curdle, right?
you're basically risking like a foodborne illness type situation. And
Yeah.
in most specialty coffee
You can't leave
places,
hot milk sitting
that's
around
that's
for
like
reuse.
that's like one of the
Yeah.
things they bold in the like employee training is like do
Yeah.
not re-steam hot milk.
Right, yeah. You just got to toss it and move on.
And so my friend was at a coffee shop where the owner came out and was like, "Oh, we got some coffee people here. Let me take care of them," and like push the employee out of the way. Made a drink for someone and was like, "Oh, there's still half of this thing filled with milk." Poured cold milk in there and re-steamed the whole thing.
Oh,
and my
yeah.
friend was like, "Thanks a lot," and just kind of like walked away with it and threw it right in the trash.
Yeah.
Um,
It's no good.
So that's a no-no. Never have
Yeah.
milk that's been steamed twice. And what Joe was saying, if you look at the steam wand and it's covered in like basically every time I go to where I used to work before like Corona shut everything down,
Yeah.
I think or Joe when he was subbing for me when I didn't work. Basically, we worked the same job but like
Faster.
traded shifts. I would
Gotcha.
show up and I think
More.
me or you were the only ones to clean that steam wand.
gross.
Possibly.
That's real gross.
People would clean that. I mean, people would use that steam wand to steam hot apple cider.
That's
they
how
would-
they made it hot.
They would they would use it to steam anything espresso wise, like so milk, but they would also use it to steam chocolate milk. So when I show up on a Saturday, and I haven't been there since the previous Saturday, it would be caked over with the sorry, Johnny. It would be caked over, and listeners, I have Corona. No, it would be caked
Corona.
over with the grossest possible thing you can imagine, right? And people just don't seem to like care.
Yeah.
And the first thing I notice, I'm like, this is disgusting. There's like a half an inch layer of thick, gross whatever on the steam wand, and people just shove fresh milk in there and make a drink and serve it to customers.
Yeah,
That's
but
insane.
That's because you work in the coffee world. If you looked at half of the kitchens that you eat at and saw like, oh, that's how they make their bacon, they just leave it in a bin next to the stove for 8 hours before they serve it to
I
them.
know.
Or like any little thing like that. And it's like, yeah, they do it because
I mean,
it's fine. Most people don't care.
When you
notice.
work in the food
But it is
industry,
unfortunate.
Yeah.
service industry, you realize and you
Yeah.
see things. I've
Yeah.
seen the owners of places do things
Yeah.
that I go, are you really supposed to grab someone's food and rearrange it with your bare hands?
Yeah.
If you're the chef, maybe. If you're the chef,
No, I've
plating
seen the chef
food,
do that, and that's one thing because their hands are being deliberately kept clean. It's not
Right.
ideal, I guess. But
Well, if
I've seen
anybody in
someone
the place,
who's like
I trust the chef to not pick up my cooked burger with his raw burger hand. You know,
exactly. But I've also seen I've seen people who are like regularly just using their phone and texting.
Yeah,
and
right,
then like
yeah.
a dish
which are the
comes out,
filthiest things that
and
you
the dish is a
use.
little fucked up. Like like this side thing is not. You know how they sometimes make a dish look pretty, right? And they'll fix it with their hands real quick before
Yeah.
it goes
A
out. I'm like,
garnish.
that's not cool.
You know, all right.
pretty
Now that
nasty.
you're mentioning
Pretty
all this,
gnarly.
my favorite is also, frighteningly enough, having mentioned all of this, one of the more innocent ones, which is I saw a guy once who was super busy and kind of behind, falling behind with whatever he was doing, and he started pouring decaf into a order for regular coffee.
Yeah.
And I pointed out, oh, that's decaf, not regular. And he said, well, that's what they're getting, and just took it out.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like,
You don't really.
how often does that happen? Where
Very
somebody's
rarely
just
you'll
like,
see the
coffee is
opposite.
coffee.
You'll almost never see somebody who ordered a decaf getting regular because people generally know that's going to fuck someone over. But
Yeah, right.
all the time, people will just go,
Yeah.
"Oh well, the regular is almost empty, so I'm just going to put decaf." I'm like,
If
"What if
you're
that
drinking-
guy's driving back upstate, like on a 3-hour drive?"
then he'll stop and get gas station coffee. If he's drinking
him.
coffee at 8
no,
o'clock
but he
at night,
paid for
he drinks
regular coffee. He ordered that. There should be some fucking integrity that the person working gives the customer what they ordered and doesn't try to.
Easy
Like-
for you to say.
I mean, it is. You just literally hit the brew button and wait 3 minutes, and you'll have fresh regular coffee. It is easy for me to say and do.
Yeah, I got to get back to my phone though.
Yeah.
I hate laziness. I hate it, especially in the service industry.
That's ironic.
It's like just
It is true, though, in general.
Just be a good person.
Most people spend, I would say, even 20 minutes in
they would be shocked.
Most kitchens, they would probably not eat out. That was what our sister was saying, that she's going to trust Domino's now because she saw something happen at a restaurant, and she said, "I'll never eat there again. I'll just order Domino's because they're corporate. I know they have things under control." I'm like, I think that's what they want you to think because all the Domino signs around the country look the same. I doubt what's going on behind the scenes is as quality as you would like to think it to be.
Well,
right?
that's why fried food is so attractive as like bar food. I don't need to hire a professional chef. I just pay the bartender an extra $1 an hour to go throw stuff in the basket fryer. It's 400-degree oil. Like,
throw some mozzarella.
Even if he forgets to wash his hands, like the food's coming out at 180 degrees, 200 degrees.
You can't fuck
it's
up.
It's probably
Corona's not fucking with that.
400-degree chicken wings.
Well, that's not an official.
I'd say it probably has to be aggravating to be a barista at some points, though, because you go through making these convoluted orders throughout the day, and then you'll meet people that I asked for 5 pumps, not 4, and then they'll either throw the coffee at you, which I've heard stories of happening.
Oh yeah,
or they'll just storm out and make a scene, and it's like, oh shit, okay.
Well, that's why working in a restaurant.
I'll be waiting in line at like a Starbucks, and there's a huge line. Everybody's getting a complicated order of whatever, mocha crappuccino, bullshit,
mocha
pumps of this and that. Can you jerk off in it
fuck
real
your
quick?
mother.
Yeah. It's insane to how complicated these get. And then they get to me, and I go up there. I'm like, yeah, can I just get like a small black coffee?
Yeah,
and that's it. And they're like,
you're almost
really?
like embarrassed. You're like, I'm not with them.
Yeah, and they're like,
you're almost throwing.
Do you want room for milk? I was like, no,
nope,
I'm good.
Just give me the coffee.
Oh, okay. I'm like, and I say, I'm like, that was an easy order for you guys, right? That was a good break. And they're like, yeah, and they start laughing because then the next person wants a bullshit frappuccino.
Yeah, but if anything, you're throwing them off and throwing them off their pace. You're the asshole still, Tom.
Johnny, do you ever have
regardless,
this?
I'm an asshole, so
there it is.
I'm just being who I am.
Do you ever have this experience, Johnny, where like you're a bartender? Like I've had this as like being somewhat of a barista, where somebody will be like, "Oh, that's not a cappuccino," and they'll tell you what the definition of a drink is. Like, have you ever had someone go, "That's not an IPA," and you're like, "I mean,
do you even know coffee?"
But like, the customer's always right, so I guess I'll remake it and make a real quote unquote cappuccino.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that all the time from people. Like, people just say some stuff confidently to their friends, especially with like craft things that it's a fad, it's new. You don't know. You're just going on what you heard someone else tell you.
It's secondhand knowledge.
I definitely heard that. Like I worked at a brewery where they named the IPAs after the brew dates, just to keep track for their own logs. So they remembered because they made them different every time. So if you made a beer on what's today, March 29th, it'd be called the 329. That would be the name of the 329 IPA.
Yeah.
Just so you could tell them apart.
I like that.
Yeah, it was really cool, and you could tell when a new beer came up too, because the numbers changed. And I just remember I was there one day,
contrast really easily.
and a guy brought his friend there, and he'd only been there like once or twice, but he was trying to show off to his friend, like, I know this great place with good beers. And he's like, "Oh, what do the numbers mean?" He goes, "Oh, dude, that's the alcohol content." And he just said it so confidently. And he goes, "Oh," and then his friend goes, "Well, I see that, but what's that number next to it?"
What date was it, by the way?
329. Well, that's the thing. It didn't matter what it was. We had a few up, so they were all different.
Oh, okay.
And he just goes, "Oh, that's the bitterness level." And I was just like, this guy has no idea. He's just totally bullshitting his friend. Like, I really want his friend to keep asking questions and just have him keep making stuff up, because he clearly
bro,
like,
it's ABV.
But yeah, I've heard a lot of that stuff. It usually makes me laugh or smile. It's usually kind of funny. I don't like get annoyed by it. I've given people like a brown ale, and they're like, "That's not a brown ale." Or you'll give them an IPA, and they're like, "Well, don't you have a beer that tastes like beer?" I'm like, "Well, I asked you 3 times what kind of beer you like, and you just said, 'Well, I just like beer.'" I've had those interactions.
Right.
And you give them 3 beers, and they go, "None of those are beer." And I'm like, all right, man.
Yeah, none of those are beer. It's like if you gave someone a really good specialty espresso, and they go, "This is not coffee," and you go, "I don't know what you mean." Like,
well, yeah, it's
not brewed
it's
coffee.
Espresso,
it's espresso,
right?
But also, what do you mean? Like there, I don't even know where to begin if you don't. So, yeah, specialty coffee espresso is different than what you would get at Starbucks, right? Yeah. Not only in ratio, it's different than what you would get in Italy too, right? So in Italy, like, they don't have brewed coffee like we have here. They have Americanos, right, where like they'll dilute the espresso with hot water and make it weaker.
They don't have regular coffee, I can't get a...
They have specialty coffee too, but like I'm saying, they don't have filtered coffee most places.
You mean shit coffee?
No, they only use espresso as their base for the drink.
Like some places will be a coffee shop, and you go in and they have an espresso machine and no drip.
That's what I
pods or
mean.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But that's where
So
the term
that's what the
Americano came
Americano
from.
is for,
you
yeah.
just dilute it with hot water.
Oh, I see.
One of the grossest coffee drinks, in my opinion.
Well,
I don't
again,
really
if you
get it,
dilute
yeah.
really good espresso, then it would just be a more subtle version of the espresso. When you have really good specialty coffee espresso, it's insane. Like the amount
rather
of
drink
flavor
the
that hits you
espresso
is crazy.
Drink the espresso and then have a glass of water after it or before it. Like, why mix the two? There's no need
Yeah, a
for
lot of specialty places like Everyman Espresso in New York City will serve you with sparkling water on the side.
Yeah, I've
So
gotten
that you can
yeah.
kind of clear your palate, and each taste you get the full impact of the taste.
Right, yeah.
Because your tongue will acclimate to whatever you're tasting, and then it's sort of like your sense of smell.
Yeah.
Like if you're around, like I was making chicken curry earlier in the week, and like by the time my current fiance got home, I was like, this doesn't really smell like chicken curry to me. Like I've been in the kitchen cooking this for a while.
And she
came
in
home.
and
She was like,
just
oh my
blown
God,
away,
that you're
yeah.
making curry.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Did you
does
know-
it smell? She's like, I smelled it when I walked in the downstairs door.
Yeah, down the street.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's carbonation. CO2 has a very good scrubbing effect on the
Scrubbing.
palate.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the term for it. That's why like you can do a little bit better on beer tastings before you get palate fatigue compared to certain drinks
Exactly,
like
yeah.
wines or coffee. And yeah, that's why like on hot ones, and you watch someone who's smart enough to bring a beer, and that's why like
Something
beer goes so
carbonated,
well
yeah.
with. That's why beer goes so well with spicy wings or soda with spicy wings, because you can you get to re-spice your tongue by scrubbing it off and then going back in.
For
God,
better
I
or
want
worse.
hot wings now. Damn it.
Yeah.
Hey, is Buffalo Wild Wings open during the quarantine?
They're definitely
Can we
getting
do a
delivery.
Buffalo Wild Wings Part 2 cast?
Oh, God. We
yes.
should. Johnny didn't get to do that.
You guys have to order me some though.
We can do that from here.
Actually, we probably can through an app or something.
there's
From the
that-
company,
Sure there is, yeah.
from the
Delivery-
company account. I want
Give the
I want
geniewings.com.
The Thunk account.
Yeah.
steaks and skee ball. Let's do it, boys.
Yeah.
So a few. Let's just give a few last.
Well, I have
words.
one more. I have one more
Yeah, we
horror
should wrap
story
up.
Oh, go for the horse
that
story,
I
yeah.
think you'll like, because it also relates to the giving a shit and the being clean thing. It's all rolled up in one. Which that is my PSA. Like Luke was saying, like just give a shit when you're doing those service jobs. Like I don't
Yeah.
care about the customer as a person. I just care while I'm there.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I go
it's
home
for
and I
sure
hate
gross.
people.
Yeah.
When I see someone be shitty in line and I'm not working in the place, I'll tell the person, like, you shouldn't talk to them like that. You're being really shitty. And the staff will always look at you like, thanks, bro, because I can't say that right now. But like, if you just kind of defend the staff, anyways. So I was working at this place. They sold coffee, sandwiches, and they had a marketplace too. So like a grocery store. So I would jump between all the places, and I was working the coffee counter. And they're telling me how to make it. Like, okay, you do this, and you hit the button and fill it up. And because they saw I had coffee experience, like, so you know how to make espressos? I was like, yeah, I can run an espresso machine. And like, okay, so here's ours. And I was like, oh, and it was just buttons, like single shot, double shot. Like there was nothing like manual.
It was
about
all
Even-
automatic,
Even
yeah.
the steamer was on a timer, and I was like, there's no
That's
skill
weird.
to this at all. And then he made the coffee, and it was the middle of the day. I was like, oh, when do you clean your coffee pots? Like, where's the brush for that at the end of the day? He goes, oh, yeah, just use the hose, get the water really hot. I was like, okay. And when I opened the pots at the end of the day, they were black, just totally black. Even I went and looked at the ones we hadn't used that day, and they were all just black. So I went into the market area, took a toilet brush off the shelf, and paid for it myself. Because I asked the guy who trained me, I was like, oh, like I can't get my hand in these pots. They were those real like narrow topped
Yeah.
or big urns. And I was like, yeah, I can't get my hand in here with this little sponge they have. He goes, yeah. He goes, I just throw an extra tablet in that usually takes care of it, of the sanitizer, which sanitizers aren't cleaners. That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, sanitizers sanitize clean surfaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't actually
yeah.
clean the
Yeah.
surface for
Yeah,
you.
the
That's why
surface
you
still
can
has
you
crap
can
on it.
you can use hand sanitizer in your muddy hands, and they're still going to be muddy after.
All
Isn't
the
that
fine
weird?
print on any cleaner that you buy for at-home cleaning says it will not penetrate like the in your shower if you have tiles like
the grout.
the grout.
The
It
grout,
says
yeah.
it will not penetrate the grout and like make that clean. Like don't
Yeah.
lick this.
Yeah. It's not going to get into the pores.
Yeah, Clorox
Yeah.
doesn't work in the pores of things.
Deep fibers.
Whether yeah, go
Right.
on.
So-
Oh God, I'm already horrified.
So I went and bought a toilet brush, like a clean one, and I scrubbed the fuck out of these pots. And I think I ended up bringing in some of my brewer's wash, PBW, like really powerful stainless steel cleaner.
Yeah.
It's basically just a concentrated OxyClean, anyone that's listening, but stronger than OxyClean. And so I scrubbed the shit out of these pots and got them super clean, and then made a pot of coffee. And first person complained and said it tasted really watery. And he was a regular who goes in every day for a cup of coffee. I was like, oh, I mean, I followed and it was like way out an exact amount, and you just hit the button and it just ground the amount you needed. And I was like, oh, and so I just ground more, and they made a pot with like extra. And he was like, that's better, but it's still off. And I tasted it. I was like, tastes like a clean cup of coffee now. It didn't have that super burnt taste. And then the owner at the end of the day came and complained to me and said I ruined the seasoning on his coffee pots.
Oh, no.
That he had spent a lot of time building up. He's like, we spend extra money to get really good coffee, so we've been seasoning those pots. It's not bad coffee.
That's not how that
and
works.
I tried, and I was like, no, you should clean your stainless
You got to
steel.
get the good beans, Larry.
Oh my god!
I was like, it's not
dude.
cast iron. You
Fuck
want to
that
clean
guy.
it. It's stainless. And he was
Can
like,
I write a Yelp review?
and he did the thing where he kind of like went and like had to stop for a second and like half look away. He's like, and then didn't say it, but was like, "This is my business, and I'm the head in charge of it for a reason."
And you
Like,
could have said,
like,
I'll
I'm the owner
lose
for
this
a
job,
reason.
but I'll call the health
I'll
department
shit
about
in
the
the
fact
pot
that you
next
don't
time.
actually clean your equipment.
No, and I said to him, I said, okay. I was like, I mean, I followed your directions, but if you don't want me to clean the coffee pots, I won't clean them. And he just huffed and walked away because he's like, well, that's not what I meant. It's like, it is.
It is what you meant.
But I
Literally,
couldn't.
right?
It took me.
Did he actually use the word seasoning?
Yeah, he said you ruined those coffee.
My coffee seasoning.
And he's like, did you
God.
see? And he said something. He's like, did you see the D and the M on the pots? And I was like, the what? And they were just written on Sharpie. I was like, yeah, I didn't know what that meant. I
Dark
thought it was
and
like
medium?
decaf. Yeah. And,
This is
And-
some redneck bullshit, dude.
and no, this was in a city in the south.
Nevertheless,
And he's very nice people, but
Wonder
like
which one.
they and so I figured out I thought about it for months after that. And I
It
finally
haunted
figured
you.
out I think the best case, not even best or worst case, but one of the scenarios I could think was maybe he figured out that if I leave the pots dirty, I don't have to use as much coffee to get it to taste like coffee. Because when I added more beans to it, it tasted good. The amount of beans he had did make a watery pot. Because he
Yeah.
didn't need to use as many because you were using the seasoning from his coffee urn.
Well,
Which
I think,
is a
I think
disgusting
what he
thing to
was
think
thinking
about it,
was
but-
people like that rancid taste. People,
The locals
grow
in the neighborhood
accustomed
did,
to
yeah.
that being the taste of coffee.
and it
they
might be
went out of
cheaper,
business
too, like you
since
say.
then.
Oh, they went out of business.
They sold it. They went out of business.
Oh, what a shocker!
I mean, it's a common
That's a
thing
shame.
when
There's
when,
a correlation
in-
there
in
for
specialty
They
you,
had
right?
good
coffee.
sandwiches, though. They did have good sandwiches.
Yeah,
I
because
don't-
people
I
care
don't
more
trust the
about
sandwiches
sandwiches
now,
than coffee. Coffee is one of those things that is the most overlooked, even at really good restaurants.
Yeah, right.
Coffee is like this extra thing they throw in, and they barely give any attention
It's just
to.
a job. It's just something that has to get done. at a lot
I
of
have
places.
to throw out the fact that I ate at one of the best restaurants in the world. It's called 11 Madison Park or 11 Madison Avenue. No, what?
No, it's
Wow,
12.
sounds great.
Well, it's,
Was it
it's,
13?
Don't even know where
it's
it
a
is.
famous restaurant in Manhattan.
I think it
but
was 14,
when they were
yeah.
doing construction, they opened up a summer house in the Hamptons.
Faster.
And I got to eat there in their family and friends night, like the week before they were opening. They were
Faster.
doing a soft opening, and obviously the food was amazing. It was all free for us, but
Yeah, nobody cares faster.
the coffee at the dessert, we got like a shot of espresso and a cortado each. It was as if you were at the best specialty coffee shop in the city.
Nice.
With latte art, deliciously steamed milk,
Yeah.
beautiful espresso.
But that correlates to good
Because
good food
this
and
is the
service,
kind of
right?
restaurant run. I mean, there's a documentary on Netflix now that you should check out if you just like search for this 11 Madison Park. Dude, like when a restaurant can even make their coffee brilliant, like not just like we work at a great restaurant, the coffee is shit,
Allegedly.
and that's not uncommon.
Oh,
Most
I would say
amazing
it's-
restaurants
I would say
have
that's
shit
the,
coffee.
That's the standard, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not making their name or
The
their
salmon, amazing,
Yeah.
right? The soup, amazing.
Their
All the
brand
details
has
that go
nothing
into
to do
the
with
food,
coffee, yeah.
really thought out and amazing. The coffee, barely any thought gets put into it. None of the workers are trained on how to make it.
Yeah.
And the grossest part is when I started working there, I looked at the top, the spray nozzle for the machine that makes all the brewed coffee, and I feel like I was the first person to clean that in 6 months.
6 months.
It was caked over with the seasoning that Johnny's talking about.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of shit you got to worry about when you order coffee at a restaurant.
That same place, their automated espresso machine. I was like, so how do we clean it at the end? Or no, I just started taking fittings apart on it, like the thing, what's,
group
I forget
head?
what it's called. Yeah, I started taking that apart to clean it out. And I was like, where's the brush? And he's like, oh, no, put that back on. And they just dropped 2 sanitizer tablets in the top and hit a clean cycle. And it would just do that.
You're supposed to take it apart and clean it with a brush,
and then do that after you put
like
it
most
all
people
back
have
together.
a toothbrush to do that with.
That's good advice. Treat it as you would your teeth.
Yeah. Should we end there?
Probably.
Sounds pretty
Yeah,
good.
probably. I just want to give one last story. There's the old tale of how coffee got its start in the way beginning of time. An Ethiopian fucking sheep farmer or something.
Yeah, faster.
Goat farmer noticed that his goats
doesn't
were
matter
eating
who they
these
farm.
fruits, and the goats would dance and run around and wouldn't sleep at night. And he was like, "What's going on?" And then that's how they started coffee.
He said, let me check out what's going on with these goats. Let me start eating the same shrubs they're eating.
who'd you
see
hear
what's
that
going
from?
on.
That's the myth.
That's the
What's
myth.
good for the
Okay.
goat is good for the gander.
I
right?
do.
That's right.
I do have just a couple of pieces of advice for anybody who's looking to advance their coffee life, and this is what I mean. I think it's true for everybody, which is basically as much as you can, try to get as fresh of beans that you can. The fresher the beans, the better, because that's something that a lot of, if you go to the grocery store, just wherever, and try to buy beans, you'll see they won't have roast dates. They'll have expiration dates, which are made up. Expiration dates
If you see
are
coffee
total myths.
only with expiration dates and no roast dates,
Yeah.
that's your sign that you're not dealing with good coffee.
Right. You want a roast date because that makes it accountable for how fresh it actually is. I can make up any expiration.
No
date.
roaster will leave out the roast date if they really
Right.
care about
if they
the quality.
really care.
Yeah.
And as well, keep your beans. Know that oxygen is a bean's worst enemy. So a lot of times I've seen this at restaurants where people just leave the coffee bags open with the beans exposed, and they're going to oxidize and go essentially bad very quickly.
Well,
so you're better off not
within
getting
a day if they're
Yeah.
whole bean, and
Yeah, for sure.
they go
But
within
ground
a few hours if they're ground.
But people just leave bags of ground
and
coffee.
they go within minutes if it's espresso grind. When
Yeah.
you see a restaurant that has pre-ground their espresso, I know a restaurant that would grind it the night before. The workers, part of their routine was to pre-grind the espresso for the following morning.
Yeah, it's no
Go
good.
fuck yourselves.
Yeah.
When I worked
Google
at
it. That's
when I
not
worked at a
real.
place with calm down. When I worked at a place with decent espresso, it was 90 seconds they threw out. They had a timer
Yeah.
after you ground
Yeah.
it.
Exactly.
Whatever was left.
No,
if
it's
someone
within-
else had
it's
an order. He
within
didn't use it
minutes,
within
yeah.
90 seconds.
Fuck mediocrity.
It's the
That really
cutoff.
pisses me off.
So I always tell people get even a rudimentary grinder, electric grinder, whatever, and get whole beans and just try to get as fresh of beans as you can. Grind them in the morning. It's one extra step, but I guarantee your coffee's going to be.
I
at
have a
least little bit
question
better.
for you. Does putting my coffee in the freezer make it last longer?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's actually a really
so I
good
should
idea.
be doing that? Okay.
If you want to make your coffee last longer and stay fresh,
It's a fruit.
but you just have to
guess
make
there's-
sure you put it
yeah.
in airtight bags.
Yeah, it's more so air. Like air is its worst enemy for sure.
I'm going to put a bunch of links in this episode, but one of them will be this website called baristahustle.com or .org, whatever it is. It's this guy, Matthew Perger, that I mentioned. This guy is so cool. Anything where you go, I wonder what would be this or that. He does the experiment. He runs it.
We're gonna
He'll
tweet at
be
him.
like, I'm going to freeze coffee for different intervals and label the bags. This is 1 week. This is 2. And
Shout
he'll
out.
run all these experiments. He's a really cool guy, and he won the Barista World Championship. I forget which year. I want to say 2013 or something. But
If you win it any year, I feel like that's props.
his I should show you guys off air his winning
We'll
routine.
link it in the description.
Dude, he's literally pouring the drinks, pouring beautiful latte art while casually talking to the judges. He's like, the milk you're drinking is from a cow. I got to know this cow pretty well over the past year. His name is Freckles. And they're like, what? The cow where this milk came from?
And you're also drawing a cow with the
he's
milk.
drawing a cow with the milk while he
It's
talks
like,
to
oh
them.
yeah, this is a self-portrait of Freckles.
Yeah, the World Barista Championships, and each country has them too. They're
pretty wild.
intense.
Yeah, that's gotta be
If you
pretty
think
intense.
that being a barista is just this no skill involved, whatever
No,
thing,
really good baristas.
watch these. I'll link a
Yeah.
few of them in the episode description. damn, like these people have skills.
There's
and,
some next level skill involved.
Yeah, more than you would
hardcore.
think. And before I got into coffee, I did not know there was a whole world that you could get into.
Think of the fact that there's professional athletes and professional like esports gamers. There's those people, but for coffee.
Yeah. If I learned
sure.
anything from
For
coffee,
latte
it was
art.
the fact that like everything in this life, there are people that have devoted their life to it. And you should always give things the respect that like the humility that like people know everything about at least something.
Like
right?
poop art.
Like what?
Huh?
Outside.
All
of
right,
art.
so you've learned a lot about coffee, and you've
Well,
learned
this
a lot
was
of
a tribute
tips.
to coffee, so-
Absolutely. So go make yourself a nice cup of instant coffee.
Oh,
Giddy up.
I forgot to
The
mention
best
mushroom
part
coffee.
Didn't bring it up at all.
waking
I don't have
up.
a heretical sense of instant coffee.
Yeah.
It's complete.
If you're
blasphemy.
listening, Mr. Maxwell House.
We should probably do another episode in the
Is
future on the history of
Folgers
coffee.
in your
Yeah.
cup.
Like the Enlightenment and
Yeah.
how
I
it
thought this
fueled
was that.
Yeah, you kind of.
No, this was a tribute to coffee. This is
yeah,
like
this was coffee tribute cast.
yeah. This is
sure.
the funeral for coffee, and we're giving
Yeah,
it a tribute.
why are we so dark with coffee? I like medium roast.
I don't know.
Light roast.
Any last words?
See what
Johnny?
I did there? What's up with that?
My last thought is just moderate your stimulants intakes.
Yeah, drink lots of water,
everything
kids.
in
Stay
My
moderation.
last
hydrated.
thoughts would be don't listen to what Johnny just said.
My
Have as much-
last point would be
have
don't
as
listen
much
to
coffee as you
anything we
want.
said.
Go drink some.
Definitely
delicious-
don't take health and fitness and wellness advice.
No, Luke,
should
Luke
leave
can
it
use,
there.
Yeah.
Luke can
Yeah,
use
let's
his
end
point
on
to
that note.
He can
Drink
use
some-
his point to cancel out my point. That's fine. That's fair.
And I think we should all use Joe's point to cancel out all our points,
Yeah, to supersede all the points.
just
There
for
you
the
go.
legality of
yeah,
it.
just as a disclaimer. Yeah.
All right, thanks for
Yeah.
listening.
Like, share, and imbibe.
Go have a cup.
Go have a cup of Joe, sided dough,
Sounds good.
Keep going.
have a little jerk off, and what do you know?
There you go.
Wow, I wish we had ended with a disclaimer.
All right, bye.
We could.
All right, you don't have to hang up, Johnny. Let's just like
I
hit
hit
stop.
stop already. Yeah.
Okay. Johnny hit stop already, but we're still going. Bye, Thunk Tank listeners.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Thunk Tank podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to help us out, please consider leaving a rating or a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share it with people you think might like it. And if you really want to support us, you can go over to patreon.com/ThunkTankPodcast. We have links to this in the episode description and other places. And for as little as $1 an episode, you can help us keep the lights on. And you also get access to a very special Drunk Tank feed of episodes. So every few episodes, we'll have a few more beers and record an extra 20 to 30 minutes of extra thunky, silly whateverness. So there's a separate RSS link you can get from there, and if you put that into a podcast player, you'll get your own separate feed of only the Drunk Tanks. I think we have about 6 or 7 of them out already, and more to come. Thanks for listening, and stay thunky.